Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I'm your host, Pete Pardo. Today is Monday, March the 10th, 11th, 12th. Can you believe it? 2018 is just flying by quicker than ever. And we've got a brand new edition of our new product feature show here. And a lot of great new releases have come out recently. I mean, it's just amazing. Like literally a week and a half ago, I had very little to cover on a new show. And then within a week, whammo! Right, we got hit with all sorts of stuff. So let's kind of get right down to it. So the first one I'm going to start off today, this is our featured one of the day. This one just came out 3 days ago, and it's basically taken the metal world by storm. Obviously, I'm talking about Firepower, the latest from Judas Priest. Amazing return to form. Well, their last couple of albums have been really, really strong as well. Since they reunited with Rob Halford back in the early 2000s, I think the really only dud that they've released, in my opinion, was the Nostradamus album. But everything else has been very, very solid, solid to great, actually. And I happen to think this is a fantastic album. We got Tom Elam and Andy Sneap co-producing this album, and the production here is just fantastic. This is one of the best sounding Priest albums probably since Painkiller, which was released back, 1990, long time ago. Great songs. It's heavy. It's fast. There's a couple kind of slow, grinding, doomy Sabbath style tunes as well. But Firepower, Lightning Strikes kick off the album. It's just absolutely amazing. Evil Never Dies is ripping evil, Never the Heroes is kind of like a Defenders of the Faith style anthem. Very melodic, very, very cool. Necromancer is one of my favorite tunes on the album. That's kind of like a heavy, like late 70s style, metal classic. Children of the Sun, Guardians, Rising from Ruins, Flamethrower is a great tune. The Spectre, Traitor's Gate is very, very cool, kind of epic sounding. No Surrender. Lone Wolf is really kind of slow, stonerish, kind of Sabbath sounding. Like it a lot. Halford sounds fantastic. Glenn Tipton and Richie Faulkner sound really, really good on here. Crunchy riffs, blazing solos, the production of the guitars, and the treatment of Halford's vocals on this album are like off the charts. Now, of course, we know that Glenn now has been battling Parkinson's disease for going on about 10 years, so he's not going to be able to participate in the upcoming tour, which is really sad. But they've tapped Andy Sneap to take his place for this tour. Like I said, I'm actually seeing them next week in New Jersey, in Newark, and it'll be kind of weird not seeing Glenn Tipton up there. But Andy is quite a capable guitar player, so I'm sure it's going to be fine. But it'll be great to hear these songs live, and as well as a lot of Priest classics. And, I think for a lot of people, this is going to be one of the top albums to beat here in 2018. So I guarantee, kind of foreshadowing this, guys, I guarantee this album is going to be sitting pretty high on top of my best of 2018 list come December. I think it's pretty safe to say that's going to be the case. So, Firepower by Judas Priest. All right, another classic band, new wave of British heavy metal band, who actually is out on tour with Priest, is Saxon, and they've got a fantastic new one of their own called Thunderbolt. Okay, there's the guys here. I tell you, Saxon is another one of those bands that they've been around a million years. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary last year. And they've been so consistent the last 10, 15 years. Their last couple albums, Battering Ram that they released in 2015 was one of my favorite albums of the year. And I tell you, Thunderbolt is practically just as good. Top to bottom strong. What do we got on here? The title track is great. Secret of Flight, Nosferatu is a great, great, epic sounding, dare I say, progressive metal song from Saxon. All right? But one of my favorite tunes on here is They Played Rock and Roll. It's basically their tribute to the fallen Motorhead. And it's just a classic Motorhead-style ripper done by Saxon. Biff Byford just sounds incredible on here. He's another guy, kind of like Halford. He just gets better with age. There's no slowing this guy down. Paul Quinn and Nigel Glocker, Mr. Nibs, the whole group just sounds great. These guys play better than a lot of bands half their age. and they just keep cranking out new music that's just solid, solid, solid. Thunderbolt by Saxon. All right, another legacy act who I actually missed them the other night. I've been getting over a pretty bad cold and was not able to attend, but Michael Schenker Fest. All right, legendary guitarist Schenker from UFO, Scorpions, and the Michael Schenker group. He's put together this new outfit called Michael Schenker Fest. Resurrection is the name of the album on Nuclear Blast Records. You probably can't see there, but let's check out the back. You know, who have we got there? You know, we got Doogie White from his Temples of Rock. We got from the MSG band, we've got Gary Barden. Okay, Graham Bonnet. Robin McCauley. All these vocalists taking part in this album. Ted McKenna, Chris Glenn. Right? Steve Mann. All important members of various lineups of the Michael Schenker group throughout the 80s and early 90s. And more currently, Temple of Rock. So how's the album? All right, so you got 2 songs on here, The Last Supper and Warrior. I love Warrior, where all the singers appear on and each take their turns at doing, you know, verses and choruses and whatnot. Great stuff. And then throughout the rest of the album, you've got like each singer taking a, you know, a lead vocal slot. Occasionally, some of the other guys helping out on choruses. But it's a very strong album. For my money, McCauley sounds so on point. This guy sounds as good as he did back in the 80s. He's probably him and Doogie White. Doogie White is a very underrated vocalist. They both are probably at the top of their game on here. Graham Bonnet also sounds really good. Okay, sings a couple tunes, lead, does a very, very good job. There's a mix of heavy tunes, just good hard rock and bits of metal. A lot of flashy Schenker solos, but it's not a, you know, it's not a crazy performance by him. It's more, this album is more for the songs. Great leads, you know, in each song, don't get me wrong. But it's more about the songs. I will say Gary Barden, for my money, is probably the least impressive here. I just don't think his voice has held up that well over the years. And the songs that he sings on, one that he wrote, co-wrote with Schenker, just kind of run-of-the-mill lethargic, okay? It's just not that impressive as far as his vocals are concerned. I think Barden actually sounds better on some of the tunes that he shares with the other singers. But regardless, a very strong album. One of those albums, I think the first time I listened to it, I was kind of like, it's okay. Second, third, and fourth, and fifth time, I was like, this is actually pretty good. Some really, really great tunes on here. So I highly recommend it. Resurrection by the Michael Schenker Fest. All right, another brand new hot off the presses is this first of what's going to be a 2-part concept album from North Carolina's Between the Buried and Me, kind of darlings of the progressive metal scene. It is called Automata, Part 1. It's a concept album. To get this, it's kind of like a sci-fi concept album. What if you could kind of record someone's dreams and then take it and play it back over the media, or social media, what have you, or in movies, to audiences? What would be the impact of that? Not only the person whose dreams are kind of being taken and displayed for all to see, but the people who actually, the audience who have to sit and watch these dreams, of which some could be pretty damn disturbing, right? Kind of a cool concept. Well, that's what the concept, Automata concept, is going to be about. So this is part 1. It's roughly 35 minutes. There are 6 tracks on here. Couple long ones, couple really short ones. It's trademarked Between the Buried and Me. You've got the, Tommy Rogers plays keyboards. His great mix of clean and growling death metal vocals. You got some insane guitar work, some killer drumming. The music is very progressive, obviously. If you've been following Between the Buried and Me for the last kind of decade or so, you know that when it comes to chops and putting together ridiculous, complex arrangements that are melodic, there's not many better. So, it's kind of a lot of that, this kind of herky-jerky vocal style, vocal styles, I should say, sledgehammer guitar riffs, crazy, unison guitar, keyboard, bass, drum stuff going on here. But it's all pretty damn memorable. The last tune, Blot, is over 10 minutes long. It's probably the highlight of the album. But there's some really, really great stuff on here. Condemned to the Gallows is quite strong. House Organ, Yellow Eyes. Millions is actually very progressive, kind of a little softer than some of the other tunes on here. So it's very, very good. Whet Your Appetite for Part 2, which is coming out, I believe, in June or July, something like that. So we got a few months to wait. But could they have done this all on one album? I don't know how long part 2 is going to be, but it seems to me it might have made more sense to put it all on one, but hey, whatever. Kind of like what they did with the Parallax releases from a couple of years ago. They released kind of like the first installment, which was like an EP, and then the full-blown thing later in the year. So that's kind of what they're doing again. So Between the Buried and Me, Automata Part 1, seek it out. All right, going over to AFM. Oh, by the way, I do want to mention that Between the Buried and Me are now on Sumerian Records. So they're like close to 7-year relationship with Metal Blade has mysteriously come to an end. So kind of a weird, you know, Metal Blade's kind of like one of the top metal labels out there. You know, Sumerian Records are trying to make a name for themselves. So kind of a weird switch, but hey, you know, whatever. When it comes to these record contract things, I know nothing. So, all right, speaking of record labels, AFM Records, pumping out a lot of great kind of power metal, progressive metal, traditional metal over the last couple of years. They are here with the latest from Alex Bayrat's Voodoo Circle. It's titled Raised on Rock. Quite dig this one a lot. Okay. Got a new singer. I'm forgetting his name right now. Let me dig it out for you guys. This is a very, very good album. Very, very strong. Basically, you know, you've got Voodoo Circle. You know, Alex Bayrat is you can tell he's a big fan of like John Sykes and the Sykes era of Whitesnake, specifically the 1987 album. He's also a big Blackmore fan, so you can expect little bits of purple and rainbow here. But more importantly, there's a lot of stuff on here that's just so like outtakes from Whitesnake's self-titled 1987 album. It's scary. So what do we got? So we got Alex Bayrat on guitar, Matt Sinner is his cohort in Primal Fear on bass. We've got, oh geez, I don't have my glasses here. Hold on a second, guys. You know, I can't read this stuff. It's just so small. Herbie Langrans, that's the new singer. He's really good. Kind of reminds me of Jorn Landy a bit. Then you've got Sesko on drums and Corvin Bain on keyboards. I'm probably saying half these names wrong. But anyway, a really, really good album. Some sensational melodies and anthems on here. The guitar work is off the charts. Like I said, if you like Sykes and Blackmore, maybe a little bit of Schenker, highly recommend it. One anthem after another. I really dig this a lot. But again, you know, I'm a big Whitesnake fan, so I was going to like this. And I tell you, the new singer fits in really well. You know, he's just a great choice. So check that out. All right, back over to the U.S. Metal Blade Records, correct? Yes. The latest from Visigoth. What is this called here? Conqueror's Oath. Band from the U.S., Visigoth. This is their second album. Think classic U.S. kind of power metal, right? You know, kind of Man-O-War-ish, that sort of thing. Sort of, but not. Omen, you know, just great guitar work, twin guitars, fantastic vocals, a lot of kind of this sort of thing, you know. Raise your fist in the air, feel good, classic early 80s metal. One anthem after another. You know, most of the songs were about battles and fantasy and all that, warriors and all that kind of stuff. Just, if you just love classic, no bullshit metal, right? With all the kind of fantastical trimmings, you're going to love this. Great, great album. I love their debut. I like this one a hell of a lot too. And it's going to rank pretty high on my year-end list. All right, here's one from late 2017 that we've just been getting to recently. It's from a Norwegian band who's been around for like a million years, but this was my first experience with them. They are Motorpsycho. It's called The Tower. These guys are kind of like a heavy prog band with loads of psychedelia and hard rock, little bits of stoner. You know, they are on Stickman Records. This is a double disc kind of concept record sort of thing. Very, very cool. Some lengthy tunes. A lot of cool psychedelic and hard rock guitar work. The vocals are pretty damn cool. A lot of grooves. Extended workouts and things. Little bits of keyboards here and there. Really like this band a lot. I'm going to investigate some of their older stuff because I thought this was really cool and really different. They kind of don't really fit into any little box, so to speak. But a very, very pleasing album. I think proggers will love this album. You know, most of the stuff that's on the Stickman label is really, you know, heavy stoner rock and what have you. But this kind of sorta doesn't fit, but does. Whatever. I dig it. Anyway, The Tower by Motorpsycho. Check it out. All right, over to the jazz fusion world. This is the latest from a legend, a guitar prodigy when he was in Return to Forever back in the early mid-'70s. He's been on his own doing so many great solo albums since then. This is his latest called Opus. Of course, I'm talking about DiMeola. Okay, he's been out the last couple of years doing the kind of like Elegant Gypsy tour thing as a way to, well, he says so anyway, as a way to kind of say goodbye to all those great electric songs that he made popular in the 70s and the early 80s, to kind of get that out of the system. So now he's back to doing more acoustic-based original material. This is, it's a mix of everything that is DiMeola. So you've got like the flamenco and the classical and the Latin rhythms and the world music, but as well as a little bit of that fiery jazz fusion stuff. So most of this album is acoustic in nature, featuring a myriad of his different steel string and nylon string acoustic guitars. But on a couple tunes, I think about 3, he pulls out his Paul Reed Smith or his Gibson Les Paul, depending on which track, adds in some fiery DiMeola tones, but regardless of whether it's electric or all acoustic or a mix of the two, a gorgeous album. Some of the melodies and the instrumental passages are just incredible and amazing to listen to. Really, really gorgeous stuff. It's all instrumental. It's mostly DiMeola who handles the bulk. He handles all the guitars, the bass, a little bit of the drums and percussion. He's got a keyboard player on here who helps him out, as well as a couple drummers who fill out on a couple tunes. So, but really nice, lush album. Breathtaking melodies and just jaw-dropping musical performances by Mr. DiMeola. A treasure he is, folks. Do not miss that. Speaking of treasures, more in the line of kind of blues and jazz and pop. Robben Ford, Made to Last. This is coming out in a couple weeks. It's an EP of his. Only 5 tunes. Really good instrumental blues with touches of jazz and funk, what have you. Really, this guy's just a great player. Tasty player. A virtuoso player. So you got a kind of mix of like blues and a little bit of funk and rock and jazz, all kind of intertwined here. Just a really, really classy handful of songs. It's roughly about 20 or so minutes worth of music. There he is. There's the man himself there. Really, really good stuff. Robben Ford. All right, last of our brand new releases for today. This is actually also a couple months old. This came out late in 2017. This is a debut from a band from Poland, kind of like a stoner / blues rock / psychedelic band called Ignu. The album is called Lightning Flash Flint Spark. Say that 5 times fast. This is a pretty damn cool album. There's the guys right there. All right. Like I said, they're from Warsaw, Poland. We got 7 new tunes on here. This is their debut, self-released. Check them out on Bandcamp. That's where I got the CD. Kind of, you can imagine little bits of Blue Cheer and Black Sabbath, maybe a little Cactus, as well as a lot of psychedelic influences. We got a lot of fuzz guitar. So a couple like the Checkered Room, the opening track is all like in your face, kind of doomy, stonery blues rock. Again, kind of like Sabbath and Blue Cheer thing, head-on collision. You got Snow and Best and Blessed, Heavy Debris, Endless Rift. The last tune is this longish, psychedelic kind of exploration. Pretty cool. Little Monster Magnet going on there. I don't know. I like it a lot. It's one of those albums, too, that really grows on you. It's some pretty heavy stuff on here. A lot of good grooves, as well as some kind of spacey, kind of psychedelic stuff. So I dig that. Very good. Okay, we got some kind of reissues and from the vaults things here. This first one from our friends across the pond at Gonzo Multimedia. It's Billion Dollar Babies' first ever live show from Flint, Michigan, 1977. So as some of you might know, Billion Dollar Babies was the band that kind of formed after the original Alice Cooper Grand split, when Alice decided to call Alice Cooper, and go off and do Welcome to My Nightmare, kind of basically cast the rest of the band away. So we got, Mr. Bruce, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Dunaway decided to go and put a band together. Fleshed it out with a couple additional members. Glenn Buxton was not part of that at the time because Glenn, who was the lead guitar player in Alice Cooper band, kind of had a lot of issues, personal demons and stuff he was fighting. So the other 3 decided to go with their own. They used the title of a very famous Alice Cooper album, Billion Dollar Babies, to name their band. And they released an album, okay, which was called Battle Axe. Very strong album. Check it. If you can go find it, get it. It's a good one. And they basically planned like a short but very like theatrical, expensive, event of a tour, which kind of was a disaster. I think they only managed to do 4 dates, if I'm not mistaken, and then that was it. These guys were never to be heard from again as that unit. But here we have the first ever live show, which was recorded in Flint, Michigan in 1977. And, it's not the greatest quality. I think these recordings have kind of surfaced before, but here it is officially being released. And, you got a bunch of tunes from their debut album, like I Miss You, Rock and Roll Radio, Love is Rather Blind, Rock Me Slowly. Then you got the Battle Axe tunes, Night and Cracked Leather, Too Young, and so kind of in between and surrounding are some Alice Cooper Band classics. You got a rather lengthy medley here, which has No More Mr. Nice Guy, drum solo, Elected, 18, School's Out, and then of course the last tune is Billion Dollar Babies. It's quite good. Michael Bruce kind of took over the lead vocal slot, so he plays rhythm guitar and sings, and did a pretty good job. I think, the worst thing this has going for it is that the quality is not great. So if you're looking for like pristine Billion Dollar Babies, live from that brief tour, it's not quite it. But you know what? It's good enough. It's decent enough. It's very listenable. The performances are good. Kind of what you miss out. You can tell, like, especially during a couple tunes later in. I know they had planned, the concerts had all this kind of spectacle going on, which was normal for like an Alice Cooper show in the 70s. And these guys wanted to kind of recreate that sort of atmosphere. You can tell on a couple of tunes there are things going on that you obviously can't see because you're only listening to it, and that kind of sucks. That would be kind of neat to check out. But regardless, this is strong. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars simply because of the nostalgic reason behind it. But I think the performances are really good too, despite the kind of subpar audio quality. So check that out. Very good stuff. Okay, last one for today before we get to Forgotten Favorites is Both Sides of the Sky from JImi Hendrix. Just came out the other day. As you know, Experience Hendrix and Legacy Recordings have been kind of putting out the last vestiges of stuff from the Hendrix vaults over the last few years. This, I guess, is going to be the last of a trilogy. Although my guess, I'm sure we'll see more at some point, but we'll see. These are basically 10. There's 13 tracks on here, 10 of which have never been released before. Again, a handful are tunes we have heard before. These were recorded at various different sessions with different lineups between 1968 1970 at the record plant by Eddie Kramer. So you got, like on some of them you've got, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell. Some you've got Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. Stephen Stills from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young shows up a couple times here. Various other keyboard players and what have you. Johnny Winter's on one track. So it's actually pretty cool. Like I said, there are some tunes you've heard before, but these are versions you haven't heard before. And if you're a Hendrix fan, he never played the same thing the same twice. So even though you heard Manish Boy and Lover Man and Hear My Train A-Comin', you haven't heard these versions, and they're pretty damn cool. What else we've got here? Steppin' Stone, another tune you've heard before. Here's a kind of a different take on it from a different session. All sorts of cool stuff. There's a handful of tunes on here that you've never heard before, probably. One cool tune with Stephen Stills on vocals and I believe Hammond organ, Jimmy on guitar. Then there's a really, really early take of Joan Baez's Woodstock song. There's no guitar on it. It's basically Jimmy on bass, Stephen Stills on vocals and keyboards, right? And this is before Crosby, Stills, Nash recorded it for their album. So it's a really weird arrangement. The vocals are handled a little differently, so that's kind of cool. And then there's this Cherokee Mist, which is the last track on, which is like 7 or 8 minutes long, and it's basically just Mitch Mitchell and Hendrix in the studio. Hendrix is farting around with a sitar as well as his Stratocaster, which is cranked up with the fuzz. It's got feedback blaring out. He's going berserk on the whammy bar. So it's kind of a weird tune, weird psychedelic tune, but again, something different, something we haven't heard before. Pretty cool. So I love it, and the... gotta love these kind of little kind of reissue from the vault things that they've been putting out with Hendrix. So it's filled with fantastic photographs and all sorts of information. You know, you just can't go wrong with this. If you're a Hendrix fan, I mean, why would you not want these? Granted, you know, some of the recordings, Johnny Winter, some of the recordings are not the best in the world, but just for the amazing factor of just having more Hendrix, it's a must-have, right? So, all right, on to Forgotten Favorites, where we look at an album from the past or from recent years that I love a lot, that sometimes you know, don't get their due or never got their due or nobody talks about it anymore. This is from a band that I've really soured on in recent years, at least as far as their like kind of modern output. But there's still no denying my love for their early, you know, like 4 or 5 or 6 albums. And this was their debut release. Still one of my favorites by them. I just think it's a very you know, most people, when you talk about Marillion, okay, the early 80s, one of the leaders of that second wave of prog in the early 80s, when everybody talks about Marillion, you know, you talk about the obvious albums, right? Okay. But as much as I love Clutching and Misplaced Childhood, right, those 2 most noteworthy albums, how about their first album, Script for a Jester's Tear, right? This is a classic. Oh, Glarorama there. This is a classic. I mean, you know, the title track is just an amazing, amazing prog gem. He Knows You Know, The Web, Garden Party, Chelsea Monday, Forgotten Sons. This is like Fish, the singer, at his best, both from a lyrical standpoint as well as the vocals. I mean, just this guy was just larger than life. Okay, if you watch my rant, Fish is and was a rock star. Okay, you don't make him like him anymore. No offense to Steve Hogarth, a fine singer, current Marillion singer for the last 25 years or whatever, more than that actually. Hogarth's not much of a rock star. Fish is a rock star. Okay, but anyway, I digress. This is just classic sounding, you know, Genesis influenced progressive rock. Some angry Fish vocals on here. Great lyrics. You know, really good guitar playing, keyboard playing. You know, got Trelavis on here, and Rothery, and Mark Kelly, and that, just great stuff. Anyway, a underrated Marillion album that just think doesn't get mentioned enough nowadays when you talk about classic Marillion. But anyway, wow, almost a half hour today, so a lot of new stuff. So visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here as often as possible on the mighty YouTube. So make sure you go out and check out a lot of this great stuff. There's reviews of all of this on the website, so make sure you go read up on it a little more in depth and add them to your little cart on whatever place you buy your either CDs from or your digital downloads or what have you. And I hope you enjoy all of it too. So until next time, be safe. We got some new stuff coming up over the next couple days and weeks, so do not miss out. Till then, take care.